Boxing truth here. Just some post-fight thoughts to the Danny Jacobs, Luis Arias fight. It was a landslide victory for Danny Jacobs. A solid performance. Embarrassing night for Luis Arias, talking all that shit. He tried though. Came to fight, came to win, drew some big shots, but it was evident in the first couple of rounds that Jacobs was in a different class, a class above. Jacobs was talking about levels before the fight, and he definitely displayed levels in this fight against Arias. Arias was just not on that level, just not experienced enough. Jacobs was too seasoned, too experienced, too strong, too good. Better boxer, just a better fighter overall than Luis Arias. It's a solid performance by Jacobs. He looked pretty good, looked formidable. Truly looks like a top 5 middleweight in the world, perhaps top 3 behind Canelo and Golovkin. He really is coming into his own. That was the best he's looked besides the Golovkin fights. Ever since he recovered from his illness, that's the best he's ever looked. He's had some shaky performances in the past. Didn't look good against Caleb Truax. Looked mediocre against Sergio Mora in both fights. So it's good to see that Jacobs is improving. He's got the Golovkin fight to thank for that. Even though he lost, he feels he won. And that fight gave him all the confidence he needed, because he needed that fight to believe where he was at, what level he was at. And now he knows that he can hang with the best. Even though I don't feel Golovkin is the monster that Abel Sanchez hyped him up to be, Jacobs hung in there, lost, and Golovkin is still a top middleweight, still one of the top guys, the top guy, well, behind Canelo, in my opinion, but Jacobs is right there among the top guys, top 5 at least, maybe even top 3. And it was a good performance. Showed levels against Arias. Pretty much won almost every round. Arias, he tried. He came to win. He came to fight. Drew some big shots, but he just wasn't experienced enough. Couldn't really hit Jacobs with much, anything damaging. And if he did touch him, Jacobs had no respect for his power, didn't have respect for his skill set, didn't have respect for his experience. The trash talking fired him up even. And the only knock on Jacobs' performance is that he couldn't get the stoppage, but he hurt him a few times in the fight. Arias felt the power, and Arias, it was an embarrassing night for him. Talked all that shit and practically lost every round. Got dominated and showed that he's just not on that level. Not yet. Tough loss, tough night for him, but I'm happy for Danny Jacobs. I wanted him to win. I was rooting for him. He was a 1,000-to-1 favorite, so the odds makers were right on all the fights on HBO. And it's a solid win for bigger and better things to go forward for Jacobs. He's this new platform being promoted by Eddie Hearn. It's only going to bring in better opportunities, better opponents, and we're really going to see much bigger tests in the future for what's in store for Danny Jacobs. But it's good for him. I didn't want him to get exposed on his first fight on HBO. I wanted him to win. I wanted him to get that opportunity, perhaps against another top fighter in the middleweight division, whether that's the Lemieux Saunders winner, whether that's Canelo Alvarez, even if the Golovkin negotiations fall apart. He's a worthy opponent, a worthy contender, and he beat an inexperienced but a top-rated contender in Luis Arias. This guy's top 5 in some sanctioning bodies, and he wasn't a bum. He came to win. He just wasn't on that level. So, congrats to Danny Jacobs. I'm also happy that he whooped one of John David Jackson's fighters. You know what I'm saying? Shut John David Jackson up. John David Jackson been talking shit about my boy Kovalev. That's what you get, dog. One of your fighters took an ass whooping. Wasn't even competitive. So props to Jacobs for proving those guys wrong. All that trash talking goes by the wayside for Team ARIAS and David Jackson. They got to go back to the drawing board and see what the hell happened tonight. But for Jacobs, it looks like the plan is wait for the Lemieux-Saunders winner. Try to get that WO strap, and then come into the negotiating table with some hardware and some value for negotiations against the Canelo-Golovkin rematch winner if it does occur next year in 2018. But that's a good plan, a good fight for Jacobs, Lemieux-Saunders winner. HBO was talking about who's a bigger threat, who's a tougher fight. Of course, they were saying David Lemieux because he's a bigger puncher, and maybe Jacobs is not. He's not the guy with the best chin in the world. But I disagree. I don't think Lemieux is the most dangerous fight for Jacobs when it comes to the winner of Lemieux-Saunders. Lemieux is a big puncher, but very limited. Jacobs could outbox him. He just has a little more tools. He has more ability. He's not the puncher that his record indicates. He has 29 knockouts in 33 fights. But he's not that. He's heavy-handed, but he's not a one-punch knockout guy. He's powerful. He's strong, don't get me wrong, but he's not that big one-punch knockout guy. But he does have good power. But it's not that devastating one-punch knockout power. Lemieux's a good puncher, but limited. Has trouble cutting the distance. Can be outboxed. Can be stopped. I think that's an easier fight for Jacobs. I mean, it's dangerous in terms of getting caught if Saunders can catch him. I mean, if Lemieux can catch him. But to me, if Saunders wins that fight against Lemieux, that's the more dangerous fight. That's a more trickier fight because is Jacobs a better boxer than Saunders? I don't know. All I know is Saunders can take a punch. He's never been stopped and he's undefeated. And he has a much more trickier, harder style to deal with compared to David Lemieux. And he does have some pop in his punches if he catches you off guard and catches you with a counter. To me, Saunders is a much difficult fight for Jacobs. It'll be a 50-50 fight. Jacobs-Lemieux, I'd say it's 65-35 Jacobs. Because he's a big puncher. He's a good puncher like Lemieux. Lemieux may be a more bigger puncher, one-punch-wise. But Jacobs is a better boxer. Has more tools, has more ability. Saunders, he might be a better boxer. Might be more slicker. Might have slightly better defense, but we'll see what happens on December 16th. But good win for Jacobs. Happy for him. Pass the test with flying colors on HBO debut. And he's no longer a protected fighter. He's going after the big dogs. And it's really damn good to see an Al Haymon fighter, formerly Al Haymon fighter, get away from that protection program. And now he's on the verge of taking some real fights. Passed the first test, beat a young, hungry contender. Now he's got to beat some champions. We'll see where this career goes for Danny Jacobs on HBO. Y'all let me know what y'all think. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.